look at that beautiful aerial view of downtown Boston, the jewel of New England. Hi, welcome to Let's Cook Today, where today we are doing fritters, chowder, and stew today on Let's Cook. We're going to do an oyster stew, we're going to do a clam chowder, and of course the fritter we're going to make is actually a clam fritter. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about clams here. I have some clams right here. These are quahog clams. They're a hard shell clam. They're not like the what you would call the soft shell clam, or sometimes clam referred to sometimes as a pisser clam. These are very, very hard shell quahogs. You notice how nice and tightly closed these are. We scrub these well. If you get clams and a clam is slightly opened and you close the clam, if it doesn't stay closed, you really need to discard it. Now, what we're going to do to make our fritters is I already have some clams here that you can buy them just like this, and what they are is they're already chopped and they're shucked and they're nice and clean, and this is great to make a fritter. So I have my clams right here. Now, to make the batter, a couple of things that are going to go into the batter. First of all, I'm going to be using a little bit of sugar, and I have some baking soda. I have some Old Bay seasoning flour. I'm using buttermilk, that's for the baking soda, and I also have some eggs right here in my beautiful copper bowl. Now, the eggs that I have right here, what I need to do is I need to remove the yolk so I can lightly whip the egg whites. By whipping the egg whites, I'll be incorporating some air into the batter, and it just makes for a lighter fritter. So we'll just take these out using our hand, going back and forth, making sure they're nice and clean. Make sure your hands are impeccably clean when you do this. We'll get rid of our yolks. We'll put our yolks right there. Now what I'm going to do is put these on the side just for a second, because the egg whites are going to whip up and take on air more easily if they're at room temperature. I'm just going to let them warm up a little bit. What I'll do right now is I'm just going to take about half of my flour here, because I'm not sure if I'm going to use all of that flour. I'm going to take my drained clams, my Old Bay seasoning, a little bit of sugar there, my baking soda, a pinch of salt, and just a little bit of pepper right in here. I also have some corn right here. Now, what I've done with this corn is this was fresh corn, and all I did with this corn is I blanched this corn. We'll drain that. I'm going to put some corn in there too. Nice fresh corn, but you need to blanch it. I would not put it in there raw if you took it off the cob. Nice fresh corn. That goes in. And that's just going to give it a nice touch in the fritter itself. We'll mix this together now, making sure that the clams separate with the flour. Just kind of get those clams separate, a little bit more flour in there. And that's why we drained the clams off. You really want them to do that. Now, you don't want to use a spoon. You can also use your hand, just like a Robocoop, and just kind of toss this together, making sure that all those clams separate very nicely in here. The great thing about this fritter recipe is that you don't have a lot of batter, but you have a lot of clam. So that's good now. Now, what I'm going to do now is put this on the side just for a second. We'll take our egg whites, and we're just going to whip these just to get some nice soft peaks on these. Going back and forth. I'm using a copper bowl. There's a compound in a copper bowl that allows the egg whites to emulsify more quickly and also stay a little bit more stable. Just going to whip these. We just want to get soft peaks. Go back and forth. See how quickly they whip up, and you need a nice balloon whip to do this. See how many tines I have on the balloon whip here? This is going to work well in really getting a lot of air into this. So we have two leavening agents here. We have the air from the egg whites, and we also have the air or the carbon dioxide that'll be produced from the baking soda and the buttermilk that we're going to use in this. Okay, those are good. That's good to go. Now I'll just take another bowl here. Take my egg yolks along with my buttermilk here. We'll combine this together, just breaking this up a little bit. We'll add our clams to this now, just getting them nice and wet. So now we can add our egg whites to this, and we can just fold our egg whites into this. When we fold the egg whites, we're just going to lightly pick it up just until those egg whites are incorporated into the batter here. See how nice this looks? And you can see how nice and simple the ingredients are here. Now, if you don't want to go through the process there of whipping your egg whites, you don't have to. You could actually just incorporate the eggs into it with the leavening that is there. I just like the lightness of this. Now, to fry these, easiest way is to use a scoop or a spoon. Now, I'll use this smaller scoop here because you can make really small ones like this. When you drop them into the oil, drop it this way, and you'll see that because of the lightness of these, they immediately rise to the top. Let me get some of these cooking. We're going to take a little break. And then when we come back, I'm making a delicious New England clam chowder. It's fritters, chowder, and stew today on Let's Cook. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Fritter Madness today on Let's Cook. Now, look how great these fritters look. And what you need to do when you're cooking fritters like this, you need to keep basting them a little bit and turning them over, but ever so gently so that they cook, because they'll come out of the oil that you're frying in. And you just have to keep moving them around, almost like you're making a donut. Okay, so those are going next. New England clam chowder, one of my favorites. Now, think about the flavors of New England. Flavors of New England have to deal with pork from colonial times. So in this pan here, I have a little bit of rendered bacon or fatback. You could use either. If you want it to be traditional, okay, or accurate, I would use fatback, but bacon or fatback. We're just going to render this out a little bit, and I've cut this very small because I actually like to leave this in there. We're going to let that just come up a little bit in temperature. Don't want it to brown, though. We want it to stay very white. While that's just coming up, I'm going to take this onion right here, and I'm going to finely mince this. So to finely mince this, I'm simply going to cut the onion across 3 times this way. Then with my knife here, I'm going to keep my cuts going down through the onion as close as I possibly can. We need to keep them very close. Good. Then we'll just shave this off. So you see how nice and small my onion already is? By cutting my onion this small, as it cooks in the soup or the chowder, it's going to actually dissolve. So let me drop this in here, and let me explain something to you about chowder. The term chowder, originally, it's actually French in origin, and it refers to a cauldron that they would use in the fireplace with 3 legs to cook the chowder. And that's how where the term chowder actually came from. Now it usually will mean with potatoes and vegetables, but this is New England, so we need to keep this really white. Let's go back to our pan here for a second. I've sauteed off my onions here just till they're translucent. See how they look? Now to this I'm just going to add a little bit of flour. This flour will be my thickening agent. Because it will be my thickening agent and flour will brown in a pan, I'm going to put this in and immediately add my clam juice once I have all the flour absorbed by the rendered fatback that's in here. So I have a nice paste in there now, or that's actually my roux. To this now I'm going to add some clam juice. Now I have some clam juice right here that I'm going to add, but I also have some very good clam juice because right here in this pan here, I steamed open some clams. If I'm making clam chowder, I'm going to use this clam juice, but not put the clams in there because we need the clams to stay nice and tender. So now we're going to come over here, we're going to bring this up to simmer, making sure that all the flour gets well incorporated into this and it can come to a nice simmer. So let's bring this up a little bit. Let's take a look at our fritters over here. Well, that's coming up. Fritters need to be turned over now one more time. With the fritters, you really need to make sure that they're cooked all the way through. Now, as a compliment for this, you could, I actually like ketchup, which actually also originated in New England as well. But you can also use a chili sauce. So I'm going to serve these with a little bit of chili sauce and lemon juice today. Let's take a look back here now at our chowder. What's happening right now is it's just coming up to simmer. It's going to get thicker as it comes up. To this now, I'm going to add my milk. See how nice and white that gets now? All we have to do now with this is just simmer this till the onions kind of dissolve into our chowder, but we do need to get our potatoes in there. Now, I have some potatoes right here, and with the potatoes, we're just going to dice these up. Easiest way to dice a potato, take your potato, cut off the one side here, slide it down forward this way, Then we just simply take this, cut this down this way. This way it doesn't rock when we go to cut it. Then take these, cut these into what we call a bâtonnet, and then take our bâtonnet and we just small dice a potato this way. Easiest way to dice a potato. I already have some done right here. Once this is at a simmer now, I will add my potatoes to my chowder. The potatoes will take about 5 minutes to cook. When the potatoes are tender, that's when I add my clams back to my chowder. Now, I have an option here. I have these clams right here, which are the same type clams that I use for my fritters, which means that they're shucked and they're chopped. They're from the same family, the quahog family. I could put these in, or if I wanted, I can go ahead and use these clams right here that we already steamed open. If I were to put them in the chowder right now, out of the shell, and let them cook with the potatoes, they're going to get very tough and chewy. I don't want them to be tough and chewy. So we're going to wait a little bit, and before the show is over, I'm going to add my clams to this once my potatoes are tender. I'm going to start to remove my fritters here. We're going to take a little break, and then when we come back, we're talking oyster stew with a little bit of a twist that I came up with. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Let's Cook. You are looking at the Capitol building in Boston, right across from Boston Commons. What a great shot. Now, it's time for me to make my oyster stew with a little bit of a Dillon twist. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just cutting these red bliss potatoes, and I'm cutting them down so that they are definitely Boston bite size. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm actually going to start to fry these. So we're going to deep fry these red bliss potatoes in the same oil that we used for the fritters. You need to be careful when you drop these in. Use something like this so you drop them in. They have a tendency of congregating together. You need to move them around a little bit. They somewhat like to congregate together. Now, next we need to talk oysters. I have a plate of oysters here, and we're going to put up the ingredients for you to see what we're using in our oyster stew. And I'm going to talk about oysters for a little bit. Oysters actually kept the Jamestown colonists alive during the early winters when they first came to America. Rule of thumb, when you're eating oysters, eat oysters only during months that contain the letter R. That means, just so you know, you need to stay away from June, July, and August. August doesn't have an R in it, even though you might want to put one in there. The reason being, those are the months that oysters, they get very small, they get soft, they get mushy. Why? Because that's usually when they're reproducing. Interesting thing about oysters when they reproduce, 1 million eggs is about the size of my pinky, about the size of a marble. So this is, my pinky right here would be 1 million oyster eggs. And then what ends up happening to those oyster eggs is as soon as they leave the shell from the mother, they attach themselves to something. And whatever they attach themselves, that's where they live the rest of their life until they get eaten. So it's, you know, these poor oysters, they get eaten, and then they're just stuck in the same location for the rest of their life until they do get eaten. And nobody knows really how long an oyster lives. So I tried to find that information, was unable to find it. Let's talk oyster stew now. First thing I'm going to do, similar to the chowder here, I'm just going to heat my pan, and into my pan here, I'm just going to put a little bit of butter. We're just going to let this butter melt, and I'm going to use a lot of butter in this. Going to let this butter just melt, and we're going to make a roux. To make a roux, and I'll explain what a roux is. The term roux looks like rooks, R-O-U-X. But roux is, by definition, equal parts by weight fat and flour cooked. That's what a roux is. Different colors roux. I'm going to make a white roux here, and normally you would use clarified butter, but I'm going to make a white roux here. Now all my potatoes are done. I'm going to make a white roux here, which means I'm just going to barely cook the flour with the butter. So now I have my butter in there. I'm going to add my flour to this. I'm going to remove this from the heat for a second just to let this cool down a little bit before I add my oyster liquor to this. So now I'm going to take my oyster liquor right here. Now the oyster liquor is what I got from the oysters. I'm going to strain this, making sure I don't get any sand in my stew. I'm going to add that. I'm also going to add some heavy cream to this. We're then going to season this with a little bit of salt and pepper, and this is a base for my oyster stew. What ends up happening with the oysters here that I have in the shell is those go in the very last minute just to kind of get softened a little bit, just to firm up. They don't really have to cook too long at all. So what we do need to do with this is we do need to bring this up to a simmer, and we need to allow this to simmer enough to cook that flour flavor off. Let me just get a little bit of salt in here. A little bit of salt. Now sometimes, based on the oyster juice that you're using, sometimes the oyster juice will be a little salty, a little less salty. But I just want to show you what this looks like once it comes up to simmer, because this is going to be the body of my stew. I can't leave this. If I were to leave this now, it could end up scorching. Now, when it comes to a point like this, I'm going to say, okay, a little more liquid here. We want this to be the consistency of melted, good, high-quality grade vanilla ice cream. We're going to get a real shine in this. Okay. Let's check the back of our spoon now. See the back of my spoon? See how I pull it across? I have that beautiful nappe consistency. It's very important we have that wonderful nappe consistency, but we do need to allow that to simmer for a little bit. So I'm going to let this simmer. This is going to simmer for about 10 minutes. I'm going to come over here. I'm checking my chowder here. See, my chowder is coming together very nicely here. My potatoes are not yet quite tender, so we need to allow that to simmer. My potatoes here are cooked. These potatoes here are cooked for the oyster stew. The only thing I have to do is I have to fry them a second time. When I fry them the second time, because of their water content, they're going to end up getting a little crispy. Let's take a little break, and then when we come back, we're going to look at all this wonderful New England cuisine. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Let's Cook Today. We have some great stuff going on. We have the clam chowder going on. We have the fritters, and we also have our oyster stew here now. Into my oyster stew right here, I have my raw oysters. They're already shucked. These are just going to go in very quickly, making sure, and these don't cook too long, and I'm actually going to shut the heat off this right now once I get my oysters in here. You need a lot of oysters for your oyster stew. We stir this around, I shut the heat off on this. The only thing I'm going to do, a little bit of butter to enrich it too. So we're just going to let that butter melt and let those oysters cook. Again, very hearty, very rich. Now, taking a look over here, we have our clam chowder here. Now my potatoes are nice and tender. Everything is ready to go. I have my cooked clams here right now. All I'm going to do with these cooked clams now is drop them in there just to reheat them. They'll be nice and tender. They won't be chewy. They won't be tough. And I don't have to cook them. If it was the raw shuck clams, then I would let it come up to simmer before I put them out. But these I just have to warm through. And make sure if you do the clams that way, you hold them in the refrigerator until your chowder's done and put them in there to warm them up. Let's see how this, well actually I'll do it this way. This is how I like to do it. Just put our chowder right in here. Look how good this looks. Rich, delicious. You have the flavor of the pork or the bacon. You have the potatoes. I don't put any celery in mine. And then what I'm going, no parsley, but we do need just a little bit of butter. Now, as that butter melts, see how the butter is melting there? As that butter melts and you take a little bite of that, you get a little, what a taste do you get between the cream, the butter, the clams, the potatoes. Out of this world. Now, let's take a look. Our oysters now are done. And again, we're just going to take this. I'm going to set this up right in this bowl right here, making sure I have at least 6 oysters in this bowl. Now, the oysters are just cooked to, they're cooked to what we would call à pois, just done. So then I take my fried potatoes here. I'm going to toss them, and then for a little taste texture change here, I'll take my fried potatoes, I'll put them right in the middle of the stew so you get those delicious fried potatoes as well. Then for our fritters here, I'm going to take our fritters, a little bit of hot sauce right over top like that, or tartar sauce, whichever one you'd like, and just a little bit of lemon juice too. I love New England. I especially love Boston, and I love doing this show. Thank you so much for watching Let's Cook. You have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.